The quiet before the settlement of New Haven hummed with the gentle sounds of reconstruction. 3 years had passed since the armistice of Kepler Station ended the brutal 8-year war between humanity and the Zellari Confederacy. The scars remained burned, cities' memorial walls, and the careful way people still glanced at the sky, but life had slowly begun to bloom again. Marcus Thorne adjusted his welding mask and stepped back from the atmospheric processor he'd been repairing. The massive machine would help terraform the outer colonies, turning barren worlds into gardens. Piecework, they called it. A chance to build instead of destroy. The integration subroutines are complete, came a melodic voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Kira, her tall, willowy frame silhouetted against the workshop's amber lighting. The Zellari woman had arrived 2 months ago as part of the cultural exchange program, assigned to work alongside human engineers. Her people's natural affinity for energy systems made her invaluable in the terraforming projects. Good work, Marcus said, pulling off his gloves. The atmospheric mix should be stable now. Kira nodded, her silver hair catching the light. The Zellari were hauntingly beautiful tall, pale, with eyes that shifted between deep blue and violet, depending on their emotions. Right now, Kairas were a calm aquamarine, focused on the technical readouts. Your people build things to last, she observed, running her fingers along the processor's hull. Even in war, your machinery was ... impressive. The comment hung between them. They rarely spoke of the war directly, though it shadowed every interaction. Marcus had lost friends in the orbital battles above Proxima. Kira had lost her homeworld. A Vesha Prime to human bombardment. Yet here they were, working together, slowly learning to trust. I've prepared evening meal, Kira said, breaking the silence. If you would join me? Marcus hesitated. Their shared meals had become routine over the past weeks, but something about tonight felt different, more personal. I'd like that. They walked through the settlement's quiet streets toward the residential complex they both called home. The buildings were practical, prefabricated structures designed for function over beauty. But Kira had somehow made their shared common area feel warm small plants from her homeworld, soft lighting, a faint scent of spices from her cooking. I wanted to thank you, Kira said as they reached their building, for your patience with my questions, for making me feel welcome. Marcus paused at the door. You don't need to thank me, Kira. We're partners in this. She smiled a rare expression that transformed her usually serious face. Partners? Yes, I think we are. As they entered their home, neither could have predicted that within hours, everything would change. That trust, so carefully built, would be tested by a single question that would force them both to confront the weight of their shared history. The evening began like so many others. It would not end the same way. The discovery, the meal was simple. But delicious Kira had learned to blend Zellari spices with human ingredients, creating something entirely new. Marcus found himself relaxing as they ate, the day's work forgotten in the warmth of shared food and gentle conversation. The terraforming. Array on Kepler 442b is ahead of schedule, Kira said, her eyes brightening to their pleased violet shade. The atmospheric processors you designed are more efficient than our projections suggested. Marcus nodded, but his mind wandered to the project's implications. Kepler 442b would be the first joint human Zellari colony, a symbol of their species. Commitment to peace. If it succeeded, it would pave the way for dozens more. I need to check the power coupling in the workshop, Marcus said, standing. There was a fluctuation in the readings this afternoon. Of course, Kira replied. I'll clean up here. Marcus headed to his workshop, a converted storage room at the back of their shared dwelling. The space was cramped but functional, filled with tools, component parts, and half-finished projects. He'd always been most comfortable with his hands. Busy fixing things, building things, creating order from chaos. The power coupling was indeed loose, a simple fix that took only minutes. But as he worked, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting between him and Kira. Their professional relationship had evolved into something deeper, though neither had acknowledged it directly. Meanwhile, Kira finished cleaning and began preparing tea, a nightly ritual they'd developed. The human beverage had grown on her, its warmth reminiscent of a drink from her childhood. She moved through the kitchen with practiced ease, having memorized where Marcus kept everything. It was while reaching for the honey that she noticed the drawer was stuck. She pulled harder, and it suddenly gave way, sliding out completely, and clattering to the floor. The contents spilled across the tile's spare parts, old tools, and something that made her breath catch. A plasma pistol. Military grade. Fully charged. Kira knelt slowly, her hands trembling as she lifted the weapon. She recognized the model, a Marcus 7 tactical sidearm, standard issue for human Marines during the war. The same type that had killed her brother. Ondesha primed. Her mind raced. Why would Marcus keep this? The peace accord strictly prohibited military weapons in civilian areas. More importantly, why hadn't he trusted her enough to mention it? She heard his footsteps returning from the workshop. For a moment, she considered putting the weapon back, pretending she hadn't seen it. But the weight of it in her hands, the cold metal against her palms, made that impossible. This pistol represented everything they were supposed to be moving beyond. Every friend she'd lost, every night she'd spent in bunkers while human ships burned the sky, every reason she'd had to fear and hate his species. But Marcus had been kind to her, patient. He'd shown her how to repair atmospheric processors, shared his meals, laughed at her attempts to understand human humor. He'd made her feel safe for the first time since the war began. So why did he still need this weapon? Kira stood slowly, the pistol cradled in both hands. She heard Marcus calling her name, asking if she was all right. She would have to face him. Now, to ask the question that could destroy everything they'd built together. But she had to know. The trust between them depended on it. The question. Marcus rounded the corner to find Kira standing in the middle of their kitchen, her tall frame rigid with tension. The plasma pistol was cradled in her hands like a wounded bird, and her eyes, now a deep, troubled violet, met his, with an intensity that made his heart stop. Kira, I can explain. Why do you still need this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question hit him like a physical blow. Not accusatory, not angry, just sad, confused, as if she'd discovered something about him that she couldn't reconcile with the man she thought she knew. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. It's single quotes S. Complicated. Is it? Kira's grip tightened on the weapon. The peace accords forbid military weapons in civilian areas. You know this. I know this. Yet here it is, hidden in your kitchen. She paused, studying his face. Were you planning to use it? No. God, no. Marcus stepped forward, then stopped when he saw her flinch. Kira, I would never. Then why? The question came out broken, vulnerable. Why do you keep it? Are you afraid of me? Of my people? Marcus ran his hands through his hair, feeling the weight of 3 years of carefully maintained silence. It's not that simple. Then make it simple. Kira's voice was steady now, but he could see the tears gathering in her eyes. Because right. Now I'm trying to understand how the man who taught me to laugh again, who shares his meals and his stories, who made me feel safe for the first time in years, how that man keeps a weapon designed to kill people like me. The words hung between them like a chasm. Marcus wanted to reach for her, to comfort her, but the pistol in her hands made that impossible. Instead, he sank into a chair at their small table suddenly feeling every one of his 43 years. "I was on Nisha Prime," he said quietly. Kira's breath caught. "What?" "During the siege. I was part of the engineering corps, maintaining the orbital platforms." Marcus couldn't look at her. "I wasn't supposed to see combat, but when your defense grid went down, they needed every hand. You were there." Kira's voice was hollow. "When my world burned, I tried to minimize civilian casualties. We all did. But the orders came from above." And double quotes, he finally met her eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Kira was silent for a long moment, processing this revelation. When she spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. "The weapon, where did you get it?" "It was issued to me for self-defense during the siege." Marcus's hands shook as he reached for his tea, then thought better of it. "I was supposed to turn it in after the armistice, but I couldn't." "Why?" "Because," Marcus stopped, struggling with words he'd never spoken aloud. "Because I keep thinking about what happens when this peace fails. When your people realize what we did to your worlds, what we took from you. When they come for revenge." "So? You keep it to protect yourself from me." "I keep it because I can't forget." The words erupted from him with surprising force. "I can't forget the smell of burning cities, or the sound of your ships breaking apart in orbit, or the faces of the civilians we couldn't save. I can't forget that I was part of something monstrous, and I don't know how to live with that." Kira stared at him, the weapon still in her hands. "And you think keeping this will somehow make amends?" "I think it reminds me of what I'm capable of," Marcus said quietly. "Of what I never want to be again." The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of unspoken grief and 3 years of carefully avoided truth. The weight of truth. Kira lowered the weapon to the table, her movements deliberate and careful. The soft click of metal on wood seemed to echo in the sudden quiet of their kitchen. Marcus watched her, afraid to breathe, afraid to move, afraid that any action might shatter what remained of their fragile connection. "My brother's name was Talon," she said, her voice distant. "He was a communications officer on Desha Prime. During the siege, he stayed at his post, trying to coordinate evacuations, even as your ships burned the sky." She touched the pistol's grip lightly. "He died when your Marines stormed the communication center. A weapon like this killed him." Marcus felt something inside him break. "Kira, let me finish." Her eyes, now a deep indigo, fixed on his. "For 3 years, I've carried that loss, the anger, the grief. When they selected me for this program, I almost refused. How could I work alongside humans? How could I trust the people who took everything from me?" She stood and moved to the window, gazing out at the settlement's lights. "But then I met you. You were patient with my questions, gentle with my fears. You shared your knowledge freely, treated me as an equal. Slowly, I began to think that maybe peace was possible, that maybe I could learn to trust again. And now?" Marcus asked, his voice barely audible. "Now I discover that the man who made me feel safe still keeps a weapon to protect himself from. People like me." Kira turned back to him. "Do you understand what that means? Every meal we shared, every laugh, every moment of trust, was it all built on a lie?" Marcus stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "No, everything between us has been real. The weapon. It's not about you, Kira. It's about me. About my own fear and guilt and inability to let go of the past." "Then why didn't you?" "Tell me?" Her voice cracked. "Why didn't you trust me enough to share this burden?" "Because I was afraid you'd look at me the way you're looking at me now." Marcus moved closer, his hands outstretched. "Like I'm a monster, like I'm still the enemy. Are you?" The question was so quiet, he almost missed it. "I don't know, Marcus." "Admit it. I've spent 3 years trying to figure that out, building things instead of destroying them, working for peace instead of war, caring for you instead of fearing you. But I still wake up some nights thinking about Thisha Prime, about the choices I made, about whether I deserve forgiveness. Kira was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. On Thisha Prime, in the final days before the surrender, I was part of the resistance. We planted bombs in human supply depots, ambushed your patrols. I killed 17 of your soldiers with my own hands. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. What? I never told you because I was ashamed. Not of fighting for my world, but of the hatred I felt. The satisfaction when human blood spilled. The way I enjoyed their fear. She met his eyes. So I ask you again, are you the enemy? Because if you are, then so am I. The revelation hung between them like a bridge, not dividing them, but connecting them in their shared burden of violence and regret. Marcus realized that the weapon wasn't just his secret to carry. They both bore the weight of what they'd done. In the name of war, what do we do now? He asked. Kira looked at the pistol, then at him. Now we decide what matters more, the people we were, or the people we choose to become. The choice, the weapon, lay between them on the table, no longer hidden, but not yet resolved. Marcus and Kira stood in the soft light of their kitchen, both bearing the weight of confessions that had changed everything and nothing. I want to show you something, Kira said finally. She moved to her personal belongings and retrieved a small device, a Zelari memory crystal, no larger than a human thumb. This contains the final transmission from Thisha Prime, my brother's last message. Marcus started to protest, but she held up a hand. You need to see this. We both do. She activated the crystal, and a holographic image filled the air above their table. Talon appeared tall and graceful like his sister, but with eyes full of determination rather than sorrow. Behind him, explosions lit the sky, and the sounds of battle echoed through the transmission. Kira, the image said, if you're watching this, then Thisha Prime has fallen. I want you to know that I'm not angry. War makes monsters of us all, but it also reveals who we truly are beneath the violence. The humans I've met. Some are cruel, yes, but others show mercy, even to their enemies. They help wounded Zelari. They share their rations with our children. They are capable of both destruction and compassion. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes as Talon continued. When this war ends, and it will end, I want you to remember that peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the choice to build something better despite the pain we've caused each other. Don't let my death make you forget how to trust. Don't let their weapons make you forget how to love. The image flickered and died, leaving them in silence. He recorded that hours before he died, Kira whispered. While your ships burned our sky, he was thinking about forgiveness, about the future we could build together. Marcus picked up the plasma pistol, feeling its familiar weight. For 3 years, I've carried this as a reminder of what I'm capable of. But maybe. He looked at Kira. Maybe it's time to remember what we're capable of together. What are you saying? I'm saying that my brother was right. Marcus walked to the recycling unit and placed the weapon inside. Peace isn't about forgetting what we've done. It's about choosing to do better. The recycling unit hung to life, breaking down the pistol into its component atoms. Within minutes, the weapon that had stood between them would become raw materials for something new, perhaps components for another atmospheric processor, or tools for building rather than destroying. I want to tell you about the civilians, Marcus said, turning back to her. The ones we saved on Thisha Prime. Your people who lived because some humans chose mercy over orders. It doesn't excuse what we did, but it's part of the story too. And I want to tell you about the human prisoners we protected. Kira replied. The ones who were grateful for small kindnesses, even in the camps. Who taught us that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting with compassion despite it. They stood facing each other, no longer divided by the weapon that had forced them to confront their past. The trust between them had been broken, but like any skilled engineer, they knew that sometimes things had to be taken apart before they could be properly rebuilt. So what now? Marcus asked. Now we start again, Kira said, her eyes shifting to a warm, hopeful blue. Not as Huon and Zelari, not as former enemies carrying weapons against each other, but as partners building something new. She extended her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Marcus took it. Her skin was cool to the touch, but her grip was strong and sure. Partners, he agreed. Outside their window, the settlement of New Haven hummed with quiet activity. Humans and Zelari worked together on projects that would benefit both species. Children played in mixed groups, their laughter carrying on the evening air. The future was being built one small choice at a time, one moment of trust overcoming fear. The weapon was gone, but the trust it had tested remained stronger now for having been broken and rebuilt. In the end, that was what peace truly meant, not the absence of pain, but the courage to choose healing over harm, building over destroying, love over fear. Together, they began to plan their next project, a memorial garden for New Haven, where flowers from both worlds would grow side by side in soil nourished by the ashes of the past.